welcome to Kevjet the podcast, Risa August. Author, you have a big list of titles I could give you: author, writer, creative coordinator. My favorite is Igniter of Dreams. I love that title. I wish I could have that title.
Thank you, Kevjet. I'm so grateful to be here. You have the coolest people on your show, and here little old me gets the opportunity to connect and be a part of your show. And second of all, what I love about you and your guests, it seems like you have been friends with your guests forever. Like, it just seems like 2 good friends sitting down and, like, you've known each other for a long time, and I just love that. I love that about your show. So, thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for saying that because that's the space that I love to create. And so I'm glad that it doesn't go unnoticed.
Absolutely not.
Well, I loved your story, and when I read your story, I definitely just knew right away I had to have a conversation with you. And we've been trying to make it happen, and life gets in the way, but here we are. And I'm excited to share your story with my listeners because my listeners are they're going to love this story because it hits on all the points that I like to share. And it's a real life story that hits you in the heart, and you're spreading a great message. You've taken positivity from a not so positive experience in your life.
Yes, and, I almost felt like I had no choice. Yeah, there was this moment where I was like, "Well, I could go this way or I could go that way." And this way just felt way better.
There's a moment that you say when you're sat on the sofa in your gray sweatpants, and you're like, I could sit here and die, or I could get up and live. And it was like that split second moment that you just chose to make a difference there. Do you want to explain to our listeners how we got to that spot?
Sure. Yes, it really was a moment in time where 6 months post surgery, I was laying on my brown leather sofa in these worn out, tatter gray sweatpants, and they probably needed to be washed 2 or 3 times. They were just I was living in them after my surgery, um and I was binge watching I'm sure another Netflix show, or I love actually, like, British baking show, so I was probably watching something like that, and I lost my taste and smell in surgery, so getting to watch those food shows is always exciting for me because the commentators describe the food so well. But I remember really sitting there, and for the audience listening, who didn't know me before, I was this very active, overachieving, like, rigid person. I was an Ironman athlete and a CrossFitter and, mountaineering and kinda anything outdoors and rugged. And I was also very organized and running my own wedding and event planning company, and so I had my whole life figured out and planned out, and everything was all lined up,
Eh,
just like
you were
just
planning
like
everybody else's life as well.
exactly, yes. And suddenly I'm on this couch 6 months post brain surgery. Not a lot of people can say they've had brain surgery. And I learned that they couldn't get the entire tumor out, and it's and this very gnarly and destructive disease was attached to it. And essentially will eventually be my demise, right? And so I'm faced with like, my god, like, I can't live on this sofa another day, like, I can't do this another day. I really felt like I would die if I stayed there for 1 more day, and I know that sounds overdramatic, but that's really how I felt, and I was saying to myself, like, "This is no way to live," sitting in ICU for 10 days and sitting on a sofa for 6 months, like, really gives you a lot of time to reflect on your life and who you are as a person, and I realized I wanted to be better and do better and live better and all the things. And so it really was a conscious decision to get off that couch. And I was kind of mourning this who I was instead of opening up to who I could be.
I was going to ask, is there a big difference between the Rissa before the brain tumor and she who is sat in front of me right now.
Gosh, there's a lot that's so different. And this new Rissa is I love her so much better. Like she's way better. Like I said, old Rissa was just kind of very set in her ways. And she also didn't understand why the rest of the world didn't operate and think the way she thought. And very judgmental. And I've been called self-righteous, and back then I would have been like, me, but now looking back, I'm like, and so I really softened, became more compassionate, did a ton of healing work, like emotional healing work, and learned a lot about myself, who I am on my terms, not like all the roles. You know how we just kind of become who the people around us expect us to be. Maybe not everyone, but I did. I was just playing roles for other people, and so that's why I see this tumor and this diagnosis as such a gift because that kind of woke me up to like, wait a minute, whose life am I living? And it was really such a profound experience. I mean, it still is. It's ongoing.
Sure.
I'm continuing to evolve.
The book is called The Road Unpaved. Do you think unpaved roads are where we find our purpose in life?
Great question. Yes. Well, I mean, the book is kind of literal and metaphorical. I took this I decided on the couch that day I was going to sign up for an 1,800-mile bicycle journey from Canada to Mexico. And so it really became a metaphor for life. I had 6 weeks, to think of all this profound stuff and, do all this stuff. But it really became such a metaphor for life as well. Like the road is rarely ever straight and flat and easy and smooth. And so the road unpaved, yes, really to me just became such a metaphor for life.
What moment made you think, I need to ride and not hide?
Mm. Again, going back to that sofa and those sweatpants, I remember feeling like I needed something to live for. Like I wanted something to live for. And so this bike journey was going to be that. Like it was going to be this, not necessarily the bike ride itself, but it was going to be this soul healing journey for me. And
Did you have a moment that you thought, well, you had signed up, did you have a moment that thought, "Well, maybe, just maybe, I'm not actually going to do this, but I'm gonna sign up and see where it goes?" Or did you always think, "I am going to do this?"
I think in my brain, I had no choice. I had to get off the couch. And even though a lot happened between the time I got off the couch to the time I got to the Canadian border, like I had to do it. To me there was no other option. And I really thought I was going to prove something to myself and to the world, and it turned out to be a humbling and incredible experience. Nothing that I had planned or anticipated, and that was the beauty of it.
It did prove something to yourself though, didn't it? And to the world because it just it showed what was there hiding for you to discover in yourself.
Absolutely. And letting go of expectation. And I thought by the time I got to the end of this 6 week, 41-day bicycle journey, I would have it all figured out. I would know what I'm doing and I'm going to go home and live happily ever after. And that was anything but. And so again, the road continues on. And yes, I learned so much about myself. And that's kind of where Rissa started transforming into this kinder, more patient, more compassionate, um, just having a whole new perspective on life and the world around me.
On the bike journey, was there a moment where the physical road mirrored your emotional journey? A hill, a storm, a breakdown that perfectly symbolized what you were going through in that moment?
There is. I don't wanna give too much away 'cause, the turning point of the book and the chapter, um, there was this moment on the, journey that was really powerful, really scary, and then also along the way, there was these smaller ones, um, I'll share this one. Someone crashed into my bike and just wrecked my rim, my tire, and fortunately, I had another tire on me, but I wasn't sure it was gonna make like, I had 30 miles to get to the next town that was a small town that I wasn't sure was gonna have a bike shop, and but everyone who was on that trip, there was 9 of us total, and so there was about 5 people that rallied around me, and that was kind of the first time I was like, "I don't have to do this." I'm gonna start crying. I don't have to do it by myself. And so again, kind of these moments throughout where the new Rissa started emerging, the Rissa that let people in and let people support her and started softening. And so again, yeah, wow. I mean, it's still bringing emotions up in me.
Of
Thank
course. It would, it would. Did strangers you meet along the way change the direction of your thinking, or did they aid your healing?
Oh my gosh, yes. Strangers, and then the people on the other 9 people on the bike trip, they were strangers when we first met, and I remember judging a lot of them before I started the trip, and one of my actual nemesis like, before I started the trip, I call him my nemesis. He turned out to be one of my closest, dearest friends, um, and just meeting other people along the way, I met a guy who, um had a brain aneurysm, and only 10% of people survive the type of aneurysm he had, and he quit his corporate life, bought a van, and is traveling around the North America and South America and with his partner, and, I mean, it gives me goosebumps thinking about it and how inspiring that is. So, I mean, gosh, yes. People are mirrors in every way, and I still struggle calling myself inspirational, but yes, there were so many, things and the hills kept coming um and again, bike crashes and medication snafus and like I mean, so yes, very long answer to your question. Yes, it definitely matched.
Was there one moment that you thought, "I can't finish this. I won't finish this."
Yes, I think it was day 5. I was like, "I can't get up and do another 70-mile day. I just can't." Like, I didn't my body I would go to bed at night, my body would just throb, and I just was like, I didn't wanna get out of my sleeping bag. I just didn't wanna get out of my sleeping bag this morning, but I tapped into that moment on the couch, and that moment on the couch is all I had to do in that
Mm,
moment was get off the couch, and so I remember diving into that morning. It was another cold, raining morning. The first 2 weeks were mostly rain and cold, and so you're sleeping, eating, riding in the rain and cold, and I remember thinking, "All I have to do is get out of this sleeping bag." And then I just took it step by step, and then the next thing I knew, I was back in the saddle, and I was doing it.
When we turn our life into art, are we healing or are we reopening wounds in order to understand them?
What a profound question. Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that. Because when I first got off the couch, I couldn't get on my bike. I could barely walk to the mailbox and back. So I actually turned to art and I started painting. It was really a healing experience for me. I actually eventually started selling art around the world, which
Wow.
is crazy because I'm not an artist. I don't consider myself, but I'm a creative. And it was really a healing experience for me. It gave me something to focus on. And
Was it calming to you?
absolutely. And that's kind of when I started getting interested in like mindfulness work and stuff and how helpful that was for me. And so as much as people were like, "Oh, I love your art, or I'd love to buy a piece of your art," I was like, "Well, you're actually helping me heal."
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
I love how when you got off the couch, you thought, Okay, right. I submitted my application for this bike ride, but you started just doing 5-minute bike rides in the basement.
Yes, on my bike trainer. And again, old Rissa was kind of like sneaking in because old Rissa was riding 50 miles, 50, 60 miles a day for fun on the weekends and riding 5 days a week. And now 5 minutes every other day in the basement on the trainer. Are you kidding me? And I had to really work through not judging myself on that. And so I started cheering for myself. So every time I did 5 minutes, I'd get off the bike and I'd be like, yeah, Rissa, go, Rissa. You did that, Rissa. And you know how you kind of fake it till you make it? And then eventually it became a part of my everyday, it's just automatic.
Yeah.
Like, heck yeah, I just did that.
So that 5 minutes turned into 10 minutes, turned into
Mm.
15 minutes, turned in.
Outside, which was very scary for me because I was having some complications with the surgery with my hydration and sodium levels, which is actually a very dangerous situation. So I had to be very cognizant of hydration, fluid intake, fluid output, all of that. And so I got it in my brain if I only do 1 mile today, like that's all I do. And my first ride was 8 miles.
Wow.
So, yeah.
What do you think the conversation would be today if today's Rissa sat down with past Rissa? You sat down and had a coffee.
Oh.
Do you think you guys would get along?
I feel like this Rissa is wiser than that Rissa, and so, again, I've just become more understanding and compassionate toward other people, and I understand, especially through a lot of the Gestalt training I've had, I understand a lot of times where their behavior is coming from, and so I feel like we would get along because I would have a lot of compassion for her. She didn't have an easy life, not just because of a brain tumor, but because of, her childhood was very dysfunctional and growing up. And so yeah, I think they would do just fine. And I think old Rissa would be super proud of new Rissa.
You probably would become the best of friends, or you probably have become the best of friends, I should say.
Yeah, because sometimes every now and then, old Rissa's grit and determination is very helpful.
Is resilience something that we build?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, absolutely. And, to me, it makes me think of that metaphor of, if you fall down, you get back up and brush yourself off. I always admire those people that go through some hard stuff or challenges, or even you see them trip and fall and then they get up and they just continue on with their head held high, and it's like ain't no big thing, whatever. Everyone's tripped and fell, and you just get up and brush yourself off and keep going.
That's right. Unless you're a British soccer player or football player that once they get down, it's very dramatic.
I have I have heard that.
It really drives me crazy. They need to, take some classes with you. If your journey had a soundtrack, what song would be on the closing credits?
Another great question. My goodness. I love music, and I it's always interesting because when people say, "Well, what's your favorite kind of music?" I don't I have such a vast, interest in all kinds of genres in music. And so that's really a tough one because I feel like my music changes with my mood, sometimes changes with the phase I'm at in my life. I remember I was in 80s, like grew up in the 80s, and I hated 80s music for a long time. Now I've like tapped back into it.
Same.
Yeah. What is a song I'm in love with right now? There's one song that never gets old, and I think it's because it's fun and playful, and I every time I hear it, I want to get up and dance, and it's Starry Eyed Surprise by Paul Oakenfold.
I'm
It's
gonna look
just
it up.
fun.
I'm gonna write that down. Cool. I look forward to listening to that after this
Oh,
chat.
let me know what you think. Let me know if you get up and start dancing.
I will, definitely. What's a truth about living fully that people only discover when life forces them to slow down?
Is that there's no rules around it. It can look like anything. A lot of times when I'm speaking and I'm talking about this 1,800-mile bike ride do, I always make sure to tell people your vision to live or your version of living fully doesn't have to mean an 1,800-mile bike ride. Even mine has changed. Like mine's gone from rigidly training to I love perusing art markets and farmers markets. And I've tried all kinds of classes I've always wanted to try, like improv and an aerialist class and
Belly dancing, I read.
belly dancing and Bollywood dance um and indoor skydiving. Like I've just tried it all. Like and to me that's it doesn't have to be these big, hard, challenging things. It could be everyday things. It could be something you always wanted to try. It could be a cooking class. It could be a walking group. I mean, and so again, when you step into living fully, it's on your terms.
Mhm.
You get to decide what that looks like.
I love that.
Can I ask you the same question? What is it life living fully for you?
Life living fully for me is probably looking after other people as well as myself. I think if everybody's happy around me, I'm happy. And I think it turns around as well. It's a mirror. So if I'm happy, everybody around me is happy. So it's a two-way mirror.
That's beautiful.
That's what I think.
That. Thank you.
I love that you turned this around. I always get stumped when somebody says, "Let me ask you a question." And I think, "Uh-oh." If
I'm tired of my story. I've heard enough.
if there was another unpaved road in your future, what do you think that adventure would lead?
Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna answer like two different things here. So I went on to kind of do another unpaved road. I rode my bike across northern Spain. And it challenged me on every level. And that taught me, whoa, you don't have to do things the way you used to always do them. And so that was a great lesson. My next unpaved road, well, I think the answer is I don't always have to know what's up ahead. I just have to know what's right now.
Those are my favorite unpaved roads.
Yes. And for a planner, as you know, because I emailed you this morning, like, where's the link? Because I'm this planner and it's a challenge for me. But oh my gosh, it's also exciting.
Yeah. I think I've had to learn that myself as well through different health challenges. So I totally understand where you have to sort of just give in and be like, well, this is what we're dealing with today. So what are we going to do? What can we do? Which is something you also say. What can
Yeah.
we do? And it's definitely the only way to look at things.
Yeah.
It's so true. One word to describe your life before the bike ride.
Rigid, very rigid.
The first thing you'd say to your brain tumor today if it could hear you.
Oh my gosh. Well, for the listeners who don't know, I named my tumor Bubba, and he and I have dialogue throughout my book. So I know he hears me. What would I say to him today? I would say, "We got this." That wasn't always a we.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. What's a moment on the journey that still gives you chills?
Well, there's one of my favorite moments where I think it was that morning I got on my bike that I didn't know how I was gonna get back in the saddle, and it's pouring rain. I'm in rural Washington, and I'm looking down, I'm crying, I'm thinking about my life ahead, and I'm like, "Why am I doing this?" And it's cold and it's rainy and this sucks. And I decided, wait a minute, who else gets to just get on their bike every day for 6 weeks. Like, that's all you have to do. Pack up your tent, eat some oatmeal, and get on your bike. And so I remember at that moment, I looked up. Again, rural Washington, middle of nowhere. There's a house, and at the end of the driveway, there's a recliner, a human-sized recliner with a bigger than human-sized teddy bear sitting in it, waving to the people passing by. And I was like, had I not looked up, I would have totally missed that moment. And so that just was a memorable moment for me. And then um gosh, there's so many.
If you could finish this sentence, the road unpaved has taught me.
Well, I think it's like what I said before. The road unpaved has taught me that things aren't always smooth, easy. A lot of times there's detours, bumps in the road. Sometimes the road's completely washed out, uneven, unpaved, gnarly, all of it. And it doesn't mean it's not beautiful. Even though I was climbing those hills, if I looked around, it was still amazing. And I still got to experience it. And that's what I took to Spain with me. That was probably the worst trip of my life, and I'd never trade it for the world. I loved being able to experience it, even though it challenged me in every way.
Beautiful. I loved our conversation. I could talk to you forever and ever and ever. And I encourage anybody out there who wants to know more about your story to go and buy that book because it's one hell of a story and it's true and it will change your life.
Thank you. Appreciate you so much. And again, thank you for, giving me the opportunity to connect and be on your show. Thank you. Well, you are fabulous. And I've read your story and I've watched some of your interviews, and learned a little bit about your personal life.
Oh,
And
thank you.
you're just one of those beautiful, like, diamonds in the world. So again, I'm so grateful to be able to be a part of your show.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that.